There's a letter sitting on a kitchen table somewhere in Australia right now. Maybe in Brisbane, maybe in a quiet street in Geelong, maybe in a flat in Darwin, and that letter is from Centrelink. And the person reading it just found out their age pension, the one they've been counting on every fortnight, has just been cut by over $230. Every single fortnight. Not because they did anything wrong, not because the rules changed overnight, but because nobody sat them down and explained what happens to your pension at the 26-week mark when you move overseas. Today, that changes. Because by the time this video ends, you will know exactly how much pension you can take with you, how to calculate your own number before you book a single flight, and how to avoid the 3 traps that are quietly catching thousands of Australians off guard every single year. G'day Australia, I'm James Walker, and welcome back to Aussie Pension Watch. If you're new here, a warm welcome to you. This channel exists for one reason: to make sure every Australian senior has clear, honest, plain English information about the pension system they've spent a lifetime contributing to. Today we're talking about pension portability, specifically the 35-year rule that determines whether your age pension stays intact when you live overseas or whether it takes a serious hit at the 6-week and 26-week marks. I want you to stay right to the end because I'm going to walk you through a real calculation using real numbers and then give you a 5-step checklist to follow before you go anywhere. Now, if this channel has been useful to you or to a parent, a sibling, a mate from the RSL club, do me a small favor and hit the subscribe button and tap that bell notification. Every week I put out a new update on the age pension, Centrelink changes, and things that affect your income in retirement. It's completely free, and it could be worth hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars to you just by staying informed. Go on, subscribe now, and I'll be here every week. So, let me explain why this matters so much right now. According to data from the Department of Social Services, approximately 96,000 Australians are currently receiving their age pension while living overseas. 96,000 people. And the number is growing because retirement overseas, whether it's a sea change to Bali, a move to be near grandchildren in New Zealand or Malta, or simply chasing a warmer climate in Southeast Asia, is more popular than it's ever been. The trouble is, most people planning this move have no idea that there are 2 separate cliffs in the pension portability rules. 2 points in time where your income can drop, sometimes dramatically, and if you haven't planned for them, the financial shock can be severe. I know it sounds complicated on paper, but I promise you, we're going to make this simple. We're going to break it down into plain numbers and plain English, because that's what you deserve. The first thing I want you to understand is what happens in the first 6 weeks you're overseas. Now this part catches people off guard because it's not the big cut, but it's the first one, and it's immediate. When you leave Australia, your pension doesn't change straight away. You keep your full base rate, you keep your supplements, everything seems fine. But at the 6-week mark, 42 days after you depart, 2 things happen quietly and automatically. First, your energy supplement stops entirely. Gone. For a single pensioner, that's $14.10 per fortnight you simply no longer receive. Now I know some of you are thinking, James, that's not a huge amount. And you're right. But here's the thing, it adds up. Over a year, that's $366. And for a pensioner living on a fixed income in a foreign country, every dollar matters. The second thing that happens at 6 weeks is that your pension supplement drops from the full rate down to what's called the basic rate. For a single pensioner, that's a fall from $81.60 per fortnight down to $31.80. That's a difference of $49.80 per fortnight. Every fortnight, gone. So between the energy supplement disappearing and the pension supplement dropping, you lose roughly $64 a fortnight at the 6-week mark if you're single. Budget for that before you leave. It is not a mistake. It's not an error on Centrelink's part. It's the rule, confirmed by Services Australia, and it applies to almost everyone. Now here's where it gets genuinely important, because the 6-week cut, as real as it is not the big one. The big one comes at the 26-week mark. That's 6 months and 2 weeks after you leave Australia. And what happens at that point depends entirely on something called your Australian Working Life Residence, or AWLR for short. I want you to write those 4 letters down, AWLR, because this is the number that determines everything about your long-term pension if you live overseas. Here's the definition. According to the DSS guide, Australian Working Life Residence is the period of time you were a resident in Australia between the age of 16 and the age pension age, CHU, which is currently 67. Every month you lived in Australia in that window counts as 1 month of AWLR. And to keep your full base pension rate after that 26-week mark, you need 420 months of AWLR. 420 months, that's 35 years. 35 years of Australian residence between age 16 and 67. Now, pay close attention to this part, because it's where most people get it wrong. They think, I've lived in Australia for 40 years, so I'm fine. But AWLR doesn't count all 40 years automatically. It only counts the years when you were actually residing in Australia between 16 and 67. So if you came to Australia at age 40, like many migrants from the UK, Italy, Greece, and other countries did, your AWLR clock didn't start until you arrived. And if you spent years working overseas in your 30s, those years are subtracted too. That decade working in London or Hong Kong or on a mine site in Papua New Guinea. It doesn't count toward your 420 months. Let me bring this to life with a real example, because the maths make so much more sense when you can see it in front of you. Take Graham. He's 68 years old, and he's been dreaming of retiring to Phuket in Thailand. Graham moved to Australia from the United Kingdom when he was 40 years old, worked hard, paid his taxes, did everything right. He reached pension age at 67, having lived in Australia for 27 years. Now 27 years sounds like a long time, and it is. But in AWLR terms, that's 324 months, not 420. So here's the formula Services Australia uses. You take your months of AWLR, divide it by 420, and multiply that by your base pension rate. For Graham, that's 324 divided by 420, which gives you 77%. That means Graham keeps 77% of his base rate after 26 weeks. The other 23%, gone. On a base rate of roughly $1,033 per fortnight after supplements are removed from the equation, a 23% cut is more than $230 every fortnight. That's over $6,000 a year less than he was expecting. Graham had planned his budget around the full pension. He hadn't been warned. And that's a situation I want to help every single one of you avoid. Now, one more thing that catches people out, and I want to be very direct about this. Thailand is not an agreement country. Neither is Indonesia, which includes Bali. Neither is Vietnam or the Philippines or Malaysia. Australia has social security agreements with 32 countries, and those agreements can sometimes change how your years are counted, or even allow you to add up qualifying periods from both countries to meet the threshold. Countries like New Zealand, Italy, Malta, Canada, Ireland, Germany, and Greece are on that list. If you're considering moving to one of those countries, the rules may work differently in your favor, and it's well worth a conversation with Centrelink's international services team before you commit to anything. But if you're heading to a non-agreement country, Thailand, Bali, Vietnam, the 26-week proportional calculation is absolute, no exceptions. And look, I need to mention something that I hear regularly from viewers, and I want to address it clearly and without judgment. Some people think they can simply not tell Centrelink they've left. I understand why that thought crosses someone's mind. The fear of losing income is real and it's stressful. But here's the reality. Australia's border system, run by the Department of Home Affairs, is integrated with Centrelink. When your passport is scanned at the departure gate, whether you're flying out of Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, or Perth, that information is automatically passed to Services Australia. There's no gray area. There's no hiding. And if someone has been receiving the full pension while living overseas for months or years without reporting it, the result is a debt, sometimes a very large debt, that Centrelink will recover. The right move is always to notify Centrelink before you go. Use the Advise of Travel task in your MyGov account, and everything is above board. If you're finding this helpful, I'd love it if you dropped a quick comment below, even just thank you or your first name and your city. It genuinely helps YouTube understand that this is content Australian seniors need, and it means more people in places like Toowoomba and Townsville and Bendigo find this channel when they're searching for answers. I read every comment, every single one. So let's talk about what you can actually do right now. Here's exactly what I want you to do this week. 5 steps, straightforward and practical. Step 1. Check your Australian working life residence before you make any decisions. You can request this from Services Australia directly or contact the Department of Home Affairs to obtain a statement of your international travel history. That record will show you every time you entered and exited Australia. Sit down with a calendar if you have to and count the months. 420 is your target number. Know where you stand. Step 2. Call Centrelink's International Services line on +613 6222 3455. That's their dedicated number for Australians receiving pension payments while overseas. They're available Monday to Friday, 8 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, Australian Eastern Standard Time. Tell them you're considering living overseas and ask them to calculate your proportional rate. They will do this for you, at no cost, and it could save you a very painful surprise later. Step 3. Log into your MyGov account at my.gov.au and locate the Advise of Travel option in your Centrelink section. If you're planning to travel or relocate overseas, notify Centrelink before your departure date. This is not optional. It's a legal obligation under the Social Security Act 1991, and getting it right protects you. Step 4. Review whether your destination country has a Social Security agreement with Australia. Go to servicesaustralia.gov.au and search International Social Security Agreements. If your destination is on that list of 32 countries, there may be provisions that work in your favor. If it's not on that list, Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, and many others, you're working under the standard proportional rules, and you need to plan your budget accordingly. Step 5. Update your income and assets information with Centrelink if anything changes when you move, particularly your living arrangements and rent situation. Rent assistance, for example, which can be up to $184.60 per fortnight for a single person, generally stops if you're making a permanent move overseas. Even for temporary stays, it typically stops after 26 weeks. Getting this right keeps your record clean and your payments accurate. Now, before I close today, I want to say something directly to you, and I want you to really hear this. If you've spent your working life in Australia, paying taxes, raising kids, showing up, then the age pension is not a handout. It is not charity. It is not something to feel embarrassed about or grateful for in a way that asks you to stay quiet and not ask questions. You built this country. The pensioners of Australia, in Sydney's western suburbs, in regional Queensland, in the farming communities of South Australia and Western Australia, you built the roads, the schools, the institutions. The age pension exists because you earned it. And understanding how it works when you live overseas isn't greed, it's wisdom, it's planning. And you deserve every cent of accurate, properly calculated information. Now, of course, every situation is different, and what I share here is general information, not personal financial advice. For your specific circumstances, always speak with a financial information service officer at Centrelink. It's a free service, and most people don't even know it exists. You can ask for one when you call 1-32300. If this video has given you something useful today, please give it a like. It takes 2 seconds, and it makes a real difference to how many people find this channel. Subscribe if you haven't already, and share this with someone you know who's thinking about retirement overseas. I'll be reading your comments below, and next week we're looking at what happens to your pension if you return to Australia after living overseas, because the rules around re-establishing your residency and getting back to your full rate are just as important as the ones we covered today. This is James Walker from Aussie Pension Watch. You've earned this, Australia. Take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.